as your site and brand develops, you'll eventually probably want some animated videos going in the background of your content or behind another video or behind some animations. But eventually, point being, is you'll want something playing in the back of your website or application. And the question becomes then, where on earth do I put these videos? Because hosting a big file on my own server is probably not a good idea. So in today's Morning for Visionaries, we're going over just that. 9 best places where you can place your background videos that aren't your local host. But let's start with that topic. Well, what about placing your videos on your local host? Well, the good news is that if you have a teeny tiny video, placing it on your local host or your local server where you have your website might actually be all right, and only if it's really, really small. The reason why is most web servers are really not made for having and serving background streaming video. They're made to deliver your website files and contents. That does not include streaming large video files. Now, if it's small, a couple megabytes, and it's looping, that can be okay if it's tiny. It's also okay if you have small GIFs. Now, the problem is generally, you might think, well, I just want this animated graphic to not really be in the background, but I just want this animated thing to be going along the website. Why can't I use a GIF? GIFs, while a great tool, technology, and file type, they are very, very big in general and generally not made for videos unless you want some really bad quality stuff. So MP4s is what you'll most likely be using as a background video is a really great way to go because you will really, really have small file sizes compared to GIFs especially. And you can place them anywhere in the front, in the back, somewhere in the middle, doesn't matter. And they can be streamed and looped and you can do a lot of cool things with them. Now, the best part is if you remove the audio track, you're already saving some size and they're really easy to optimize. But let's say you don't have a teeny tiny one and you do want to host these videos elsewhere. So let's go over the best 9 that you can, best 9 web hosts, I should say, that you can place your videos. Now, before we start this list, a bunch of them can be used and have a lot of features that are good for other than just hosting the videos in the background. A lot of them have marketing tools, A/B split testing, video player customizations if you want something in the front end. But let's go through this list and I'll tell you the pros and cons of each. And we've used a lot of these before, so I can give you some firsthand experience and knowledge of this. First and foremost, probably the easiest and most well-known on the list is YouTube. You can definitely host your background videos on YouTube. The plus is that, well, it's super easy. Almost everybody has a YouTube account. And then I mention it's easy. I mean, like really, really easy to get this stuff on YouTube, host it. It'll do all the processing and everything. It'll do everything for you. And all you have to do is just plop it in the background using one of your tools. And it's really easy. And it will pretty much just work. The problem is that YouTube is not the fastest. Believe it or not, it is not the fastest. And it has some bloat that comes with the player tools. So if you're loading a background video in YouTube, it is going to slow your website down because there's a lot of things loading just to get this stuff going. And if really all you need is just this video, no sound, no nothing, just to play in the background, YouTube is kind of overkill and it is kind of slow. But it is free, and that's important. Another well-known one is Vimeo. Vimeo is a professional video hosting platform, and it is really great for this kind of stuff because it is relatively fast, it's a pretty good interface, and some decent customization options. The problem with Vimeo is that it does kind of limit you on the types of content. They're kind of picky sometimes, but that's okay for a lot of us. And it costs a decent amount of money, and it can get a little bit more complex when going forward. Very similar to Vimeo is Wistia. It's pretty darn fast, has a pretty good interface, small learning curve. The plus is that, again, you have to start paying for these things. But the biggest problem we found with Wistia is that for some reason, and I'm guessing it's because of their tracking and analytics tools, is some ad blockers, especially if you're using ad blockers in your browser, Ghostery has a tendency to block Wistia for those reasons. So plus and minus of that one. Now, getting probably to things you may not have heard about. There's a fun, I don't want to call it a new player on the block, called Publitio. And I'm really not sure how to pronounce the name. Publitio. So these guys, they're extremely, extremely fast, which is awesome. And there's a decent amount of customization options, sort of, and they're extremely well priced for what they do. Not to mention they're fast. The problem is that their interface is really clunky and kind of hard to get around, which becomes rather problematic, because, especially when you want to upload files and then get them out and use them somewhere. It's kind of a pain. And their processing stuff takes a little while, and I really never know when the file is going to be ready to be used. So it's great and we love it and we use it, but I usually have to wait a day-ish. I know it's not an actual day, and their team will tell you when exactly, and they'll have more information than I do. But we always have to wait a while until it's done processing, until it's usable. So that part's kind of frustrating. But like I said, we love it because it's extremely fast and very well priced. A fun one on this list, the next one, is called Swarmify. Now, I'll start with the negative on this one. It is not a video hosting service in and of itself. So that's kind of a big minus. Also, of course, you have to pay for it. It's kind of bad. But the great part is that you can host your video file almost anywhere else. And because Swarmify is a content delivery network, it then pulls your file from wherever you hosted it from, including from your local host, and YouTube, and Wistia, and Vimeo, and Publitio. It pulls these things into their content delivery network, and it has blazing fast content delivery. So if you host it on Publio, Wistia, YouTube, whatever, it'll pull those files and deliver them for you in their own player and extremely, extremely fast with minimal bloat, which is pretty cool. So if you combine free YouTube with Swarmify, you've already got a pretty darn fast system in place. And because Swarmify will then put its own player on top, you wouldn't have to, for example, worry about YouTube's interface and clunkiness. So it's really, really cool. Oh, the one little minus of Swarmify before we continue is that the interface, you do have some limited options on how you can customize it. And while we use Swarmify, I do really want some better options on what I can put there. And then a really interesting option, and many of us kind of don't think about this, you can use Cloudflare. Now, not the regular Cloudflare, it's their own product called Cloudflare Stream. It's very, very fast. It's enterprise class fast, and has a lot of customization options and nerdiness that you can do in there. The big problem of well, the pricing, really that's the problem. Not that it gets expensive, it can, but it's a variable price, which could be a good thing or bad thing, depending how you use things. So if you use it a lot, your rates will go up and up and up and keep just going up based on usage. But the other problem with pricing is that there's several tiers of pricing, and it can get really complex on exactly what you're going to pay, because you're paying for hosting, the actual storage space, and the delivery of said videos and whatever else you're using on top of it. So Cloudflare's pricing it's clear, but it gets complex on what you're actually going to pay. So that's kind of a big minus. But it does really work relatively well. A fun one, and these next two are kind of big players on the block. Bright Cove is kind of a big player, and they have a lot, and I mean a lot, of tools and customization options that you can do with their player. The problem is the price. More so, not only that it gets expensive kind of fast, because it kind of sort of starts at $200 a month, but the pricing's not clear. The only way to get a clear idea of what you're going to pay with them is if you have to contact them and go through the whole sales process, which is kind of minus and frustrating. But they're generally made and based on everything we've seen on larger clients, so may not be good for smaller clients. But they do have a very, very fast network, a lot of tools, and a lot of cool, neat things you can do and customize. So still worth looking into if you have the budget and need more enterprisey type stuff. Vidyard is definitely a larger business oriented tool, though they do have some regular people oriented pricing and plans. The price, it can get expensive extremely fast, especially if you go with the custom stuff. It starts at $5,000, I think it was, or was it $2,000? The point being, it gets expensive pretty darn fast. But they do have free plans, which is great, and small plans. And one of my favorite things is that they have video personalization options, meaning if you can, using code and nerdy things, you can say, I want to create a video for Bob, and they'll customize the video and say, hey, Bob. Well, it won't say, it'll write the words, hey, Bob, in the video for you and deliver this content for you. So that's pretty freaking sweet. And they're very fast. And now, last but not least, is Sprout Video. I will say, and this is kind of biased, I don't like their branding. It looks a little bit dated, but that's just me. And so that's not a professional opinion. That's just my personal taste. But they are fast, they're reasonably priced, and they have a plethora of customization options. Not as many options as Vidyard, because Vidyard, holy moly, does Vidyard have a lot of options. Again, expensive though. But Sprout Video has a decent amount of options, reasonably priced, and a pretty good interface once you finally get in there. The problem is, and this is only a small problem, is that you can potentially hit their plan limits relatively quickly. Depends on how you're using it. And that's kind of the only real minus of Sprout Video. So that's it for today's list. 9 plus self-hosting, of course. If you have any questions on what's going on in these things, what is a good option, what's not a good option, or how to use any of these things for background videos, leave a message in the comments. We'll be happy to answer, or leave your own recommendation in the comments, and because I'd love to learn about more options and how it all works. All of these that we've identified here are very, very darn good with background video delivery, mostly because they're made for speed, with kind of exception for YouTube, but it can be used very well for that. And we've identified these specifically because they load very, very fast and have a decent amount of options for what you can do, and have additional features when you do want to host regular videos on the front end. So leave us information in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say about background videos. See you next time. Bye.